and the rain the salt will quickly wash out of the soil. Salt and boron both are easily leached out of the soil. So I have to be careful of that. And if you call me, I need to know what part of the country you live in. Do you live in a dry place? Do you live in a wet place? And we'll adjust it accordingly there. Okay, ocean water is chemically close to human blood and has been used in transfusions in extreme conditions. During World War II, double-filtered ocean water was used as a substitute for human blood in transfusions. Now you can imagine that during that war, blood was in short supply, and especially out in the Pacific Ocean on some of the hospital ships, they were double filtering this and using it and saving many, many lives. A friend of mine, Dr. Calvin Dentz from Tennessee, was a young man and had just joined the Navy during the Second World War. He wasn't a doctor then. Yeah, he was on a boat, on a ship, and for some reason, some man was overboard and was attacked by sharks. They were able to get him back into the boat, but he had so much damage and so much blood loss that they were going to lose him. And the doctor on board quickly filtered ocean water and gave it to him as a transfusion and saved that particular man's life there. Results of the ocean water: long shelf life. Food grown this way does not seem to rot. It may dry out, but it doesn't seem to spoil. The Perks reading is not necessarily higher, but the taste is excellent. Ocean water makes carrots sweet and crisp, tomatoes with excellent, good flavor, healing properties, there are curative effects there. You see, because in our blood we have all of these micronutrients, some of them in very, very small amounts, but they're there for a purpose. And we're not getting those from the food that we're buying in the store that's grown the standard way. So by letting the plant take up these nutrients, making them into an organic food, now if we eat that, we're getting all of those minerals that we're not getting, that are in short supply, that our body needs. So this is a very healing thing, very beneficial. And the side benefit is that that food will taste much, much better. Again, I'll tell you a quick story here. I mentioned this garden with 6 rows, and that was a little teaching garden for me in Placerville, California. Well, I had my granddaughter come to this garden. She liked to go there, and she had a little friend. I think they were 7, 8, 9 years old, someplace in there. And she didn't want to hear Grandpa talk. She would go play in the garden with her friend. And so these little girls would go through, and they would taste things in every row as they went through. Now, in that garden, if I planted something in one row, I planted it in every row, the same day, the same seed, the same plant, whatever it is, so we'd have a comparison from one row to another. And we had just a short section of carrots planted, maybe 3 feet of carrots there. Well, these little girls started the upper end of the garden and started tasting carrots, and you know, carrots have to get pretty mature, and they need some cold weather to sweeten up there. So they tasted the carrots, and they were no good. They spit them out. They came to the ocean water row, and they stopped. They stayed right there, and they were eating carrots, and I was worried that there wouldn't be any carrots left for the other people in the class. So I went up to her and said, "Do you suppose you could eat some carrots in some of the other rows?" She said, "Oh, no, Poppy, they don't taste good." You'll find that this sweetens up your carrots just very, very nicely, and a lot of other things. Another quick story, if I can tell it. We had planted 2 nectarine trees in Brownsville, California. I had a seminar there. And about a year and 2 or 3 months later, I was doing another seminar in the same place. And there was this little Spanish lady in the kitchen, and she kept jabbering to me, and I understand as much Spanish as I do Hindi. So I didn't know what she was saying, but she kept talking about those trees. So anyway, when I had a chance, I went out there and took a look at those nectarine trees, and they were both had ripe fruit on them. We planted these two trees, one the Ellen White method, which we'll do in a little bit here, and then one just the standard method, which means we just dig a hole and we put it in the ground. And you know, anyway, both these trees had ripe fruit on it, so I picked one off the standard tree, and it was sweet. It was good. It's what you expect a good nectarine to taste like there. Then I went and picked one off of the Ellen White tree, and it was incredibly better. I couldn't believe the difference. So now this is just 2 years since those trees had been planted. There wasn't a lot of fruit, but I picked some. And I took it up to the cafeteria, cut it up, and passed 2 plates around to people and said, tell me which one you like best. And to a person, everybody says, wow, that's a great one there. And you'll find that happens with peaches and nectarines, melons, and a lot of different things. Anyway, and it's because of all of those minerals in that ocean water, in the right balance there. Okay. Okay, the Ellen White planting method. This planting method comes from divine wisdom. We don't know all the reasons it works, and I could never come up with this method on my own, but it works. It just plain works. If you want to see a little miracle, just plant one little tree this way. Here's an example. These 2 trees. The one on the right is planted the forestry method. The one on the left is the Ellen White method. They were both the same size. They were both maybe 12 inches tall and little tiny tubes when we planted them. I made sure that the one we put in this Ellen White hole was not the biggest. There wasn't much difference, but I made sure because I knew what kind of results we were going to get there. Just a huge difference in the growth. Now here's how we do it. Here's how to grow 100 pounds of tomatoes on one plant. We plant tomatoes the same way. We dig a deep hole, and then according to the soil test, we mineralize it. We're putting in the right rock powders and whatever, and different layers of material. One of the layers is a layer of rock. I'll show you that in a minute here. There. Okay, what is this? It's deep digging and layers of topsoil, rock powders, composts, rocks. They go together to create a healthy and abundant growth. The layer of rocks changes the electrical current in the soil and helps the roots to grow. You might consider growing other deep-rooted fruits and vegetables this way. From the South Pole, let's picture the Earth here in a globe, and from the South Pole there is an electrical magnetic current that comes out and goes over the Earth and then goes back into the North Pole. That's this flow of energy that John was talking about a little earlier there. This is an electrical magnetic field. Matter of fact, when you get bare root trees in the spring and you're going to plant, take a look at those trees and you'll see that most of the roots are going in one direction. Not all of them, but most of the roots are going in one direction. And they're following magnetic north. They're following that energy force. The same thing that makes your compass needle go to the north is going to make those roots go that way. I was talking about the rocks. Thank you, Elizabeth. So what does this layer of rock do? It changes somehow or other that electrical magnetic field in that hole. We can actually measure it. It's a slight change, but we can actually measure that change. And it helps that tree or that plant to grow better. It's an interesting thing there. And I never could have come up with that on my own. It just works. So the results of the Ellen White method: healthy, large growth, abundance with high Brix. It's best combined with a weekly feeding of some ocean water. Now, if we do this weekly, we need to change those percentages or that formula in your handout, because that's for a monthly feeding there. Okay, and we can take out the mint lighter. We don't do that anymore, but we do use the International Ag Labs. We want to test the soil. We want to put the right things back in there. Okay, 100 kilometers from any power lines, way out in the desert area. There's a Swedish company, and they're working on a grant, and they go out there and they're digging long trenches, and they're filling them this way, the Ellen White planting method. They're not growing anything. They put a wire in the top layer, and they put a wire in the bottom, and they bring them together, and now they have enough current, enough electrical current to run LED lights. So this village, way out in the middle of nowhere, now has electrical lights all night long. Not only that, but now they can recharge their cell phone batteries, and they can recharge their laptops. So a village that for thousands of years has been isolated from the rest of the world, all of a sudden can be connected to the rest of the world. It's an interesting thing there. Okay, Ellen White planting versus the forestry method. Okay, May 2004, 6 sequoia trees. They're the trees that eventually get to be giants, you know, the giant redwoods there. 6 of them were planted, they were the same size, planted at the same time, at the same place. 5 were planted the forestry department method, and 1 the Ellen White method. And let's see, this is at 3.5 years. Well, that's just one of them, and this is at 3.5 years. So you can see the tremendous difference in growth. Now, to be fair about it, the forestry method, the forestry is planting thousands and thousands of acres of trees. Incidentally, we have a fire that has blackened about 80,000 acres in my county alone. Now the fire is still burning there. So there's a big black spot on my county that's going to be there for a long time. But they go back and they reforest these areas, and they have a tool that they put in the ground that they step on and open up a hole in the ground. They drop a seedling in there and pull this out and step on it, and so they can plant many, many trees there. That's the forestry method, where this Ellen White method is just giving that tree everything that it needs, including these different layers there. Now, if you let's see, let's go on here. Okay, you can tell which tree is the Ellen White tree and which one is not. There, this is at 5 years of growth. The little one has grown a little bit taller, but not great yet. Tremendous difference in growth in these. There's 5 years, and it's 6 years. And if you go there today, well, look at the difference in the trunk size there. Okay, if you go there today, trying to find the little one there. There it is, that one on the right. That one did not make it. We've had a pretty severe drought in California for the last few years. The first year, I watered all of those trees because they're at a lower elevation than they grow naturally, so they get less water at the lower elevation. So I watered them all the first year. After that, they're pretty much on their own. And that little tree on the right did not make it last year in the drought. It died there. Okay, I want to go back here to... Okay, here we're looking at a picture of a hole that's been dug out. And we fill that up with different layers of materials. And then we put a pipe down there. What we're doing is getting air into the ground. And what we find is that the more air we get to a plant's roots without drying it out, the faster it grows. So we're looking for air here. Here we are, we're mixing the different materials that are going to go into that hole. Then there's a layer of rock. If you leave out anything, don't leave out the layer of rock. That was one of the things that is particularly important.
Change the pipe and put it on top of the...
Yeah, this, Elizabeth's reminding, because of what we found out recently, we've changed that air pipe. So we used to put it in the bottom of the hole. We put it now on top of the layer of rock. what makes that difference in electrical magnetic current is the difference between the layer of rock down. We want that soil to be anaerobic, growing without oxygen. Everything from the layer of rock up, we want to be aerobic. And if you look at your handout, you want to find that for me, Elizabeth? If you look at that handout, you'll see that it's corrected there so that we have that pipe. Now, if you don't have that pipe, sometimes I'll take the pot that the plant came in and turn it upside down if it's strong enough that it won't collapse under the weight there. Any question?
Does it matter what kind of rock?
It's a good question. Does it matter what kind of rock? And I don't know the answer to that because I'd have to do, I suppose, 100 with one type of rock and 100 with another and just see whether there was a difference
But you
there.
just use whatever.
I just use, in this case, we used what we dug out of that hole. Okay, if you don't have rock on your property when you're planting, then get about 10 gallons of gravel per tree and put it in. That'll be fine. You want 2 to 4 inches of rock there, and that would work there. Okay, here's that handout, and this shows you how to make it. Your question in the back here? Okay, the question is, since we've got this pipe down there, how do we get air down there? Well, we're just putting anything down there with air. Now, there'll be more carbon dioxide with this air over a period of time than the air on the surface. It'll still work. In some cases, we have done long rows, trenches, and put French drain pipe in, which has holes all along it, and then we've daylighted it on both ends so that there could be a free flow of air through there. And that's another way to get air in there. Okay.
Is the pipe just PVC
The-
or steel or?
Could the pipe be PVC or steel or clay pipe? Any of those will work, yes. And it could even be the pot we took the plant out of.
When you said you had open at each end, now were there holes in it so that it would allow it to get to the roots then, kind of like tile for draining?
Yes, question is when we have this long pipe, are there holes all through it? Yes. Or you could use drain tile like you would tile a field there. The thing is we need air. We need air down there. You do have to be aware of this. If that fills up with water, you're not going to get air through it. I'll talk more about that tomorrow. We'll get some pretty fantastic results with that. There, yes, ma'am.
Did you say anaerobic below the rock or above the rock?
The question is, anaerobic goes below the rock, and everything from the rock up we want to encourage to be aerobic. It's the difference between the anaerobic and the aerobic that's going to make that electrical difference there. Okay. If you're in an area where you have gophers, anybody have gophers in here? You have gophers?
Lots.
Lots of them. Are you in Minnesota? Okay. Well, we'll talk about that later. Okay, if you have gophers, you have to protect these things because the gophers love the roots of fruit trees. You don't grow figs here, but I've had fairly large fig trees killed because of gophers. They just love that. So what do? Most gophers operate in the top 16, 18 inches of ground. So if you will take gopher wire, hardware cloth here, anything that is a ½ inch or smaller, and I like this 1/4 inch better, but anything that is ½ inch and smaller, and wrap it around that tree while we're planting it. Now, make that wire go down in the hole deep enough that the gopher isn't going to go underneath it. Now, a gopher can easily go 3 feet, 4 feet down in the ground. They do. They make their nests that far. But the gopher is traveling around the ground fairly close to the surface because that's where he finds roots to eat. And also you'll notice that gophers, you know if you've got gophers because every now and then you've got a gopher hill. They're throwing this soil up on the top. And so the gopher, if he's deep in the ground, he's got a lot more work to take that soil to the top. He's within a few inches of the surface, 10 inches usually for most of his work. So if you've got this down 16, 18 inches, you're pretty safe there. Now, if you've got gophers, we found that it's a whole lot easier to make this, cut that wire off at about 10 feet, maybe 9.5 feet, and wrap it around. And it's a whole lot easier to plant that tree than this little hole here, or little circle that I have here. So put that in the ground, pardon me, put that in the ground while you're planting and eliminate the gophers there. And, now you do need about 6 inches of this on top of the ground, because that gopher, as he's traveling, this is the top of the ground and he's traveling through here, he hits your gopher fence, he's going to come up. That's his habit. He won't go down, he'll come up. When he comes to the top, comes to the ground, if that's the top of your gopher fence too, he'll just walk across and now you got him trapped inside your garden. So make about 6 inches, 4 to 6 inches, and he will not climb that. He's a ground animal, and he knows that he's dinner for an owl or a fox or a skunk or something if he starts climbing, so he won't climb there. Okay. Here's another thing that you need to protect from. In this particular garden, this was in Northern California, the guy had not put his deer fence up yet, and we were just planting these little fruit trees. So we had to put a temporary deer fence around. If you do that, you need to anchor that fencing so that it won't move. Otherwise the deer will come up and he'll just push that fence over and he'll eat your tree anyway. And he can actually kill that tree pretty fast when it's that small. We had a case this spring where a man had a whole flock of goats in a neighboring field, and they got down and got into an orchard with hundreds of fruit trees. These trees were maybe 10 to 15 years old, and they just killed many, many trees. The goats got in and just ate the trees up, ate the bark up there. Now deer will do the same thing. Deer's real close to a goat there, so you've got to have protection for it there. Okay, here's just one of our gardens in Placerville, California. Now, in this particular garden, we had zero money for a budget. So in the garden class, I just said to people, here's a list of things that we need in the garden, and if anybody wants to sign up for it, they can. And I had different kinds of melons, and even the poorest people in the class would sign up for some seeds or something. And an unexpected result was that people took ownership of that. One man said, hey, I'll bring melons. I said, okay. So he got a bunch of different melon plants and took good care of them in the garden. And this particular watermelon, when it was ripe, we picked it and cut it open on the picnic table there in the garden. And it was bright yellow and surprised us all. But he had bought a yellow watermelon and it was absolutely delicious there. A couple of different tomatoes. The tomato on the right is Sun Gold, and it's the sweetest tomato that I have ever grown. So if you have a chance to get that, you can in most nurseries. It's called Sun Gold. It's a cherry tomato, and very, very sweet, very, very good tomato there. The one on the left is Early Girl, and it's a smaller tomato, maybe about the size of a tennis ball or so. And again, good flavor there. There's a little lady that has come to our garden class for 10 years, just faithfully. She just loves this garden class. Her name is Sobeda Carry On, and she came to me one year and had this pathetic little plant in a styrofoam cup. And she said, "Oh, Lynn," she said, "I grew this and I saved the seed. This is a kabocha squash, and I saved the seed because it's my favorite squash, and I want to plant it in the garden." Well, I didn't say this to her out loud, but I thought it just very strongly in my mind. "So, Beta, you shouldn't have done that. Squash crosses, and that little skinny plant that you just gave me may have crossed with a cucumber or a zucchini or yellow squash or something else, and we get something that we just didn't want there." But she was so proud of that skinny little ugly plant that we planted it. And I took transplant formula, which we'll demonstrate tomorrow, and we planted that thing right in the garden, gave it the right minerals. We'd already broadcast the fertilizers for that garden. That plant took over the lower part of the garden and just grew wonderfully well. There. Okay, anybody know what that is? Armenian cucumber. It's actually a melon, but it's a favorite of a lot of people. We had so many of those we couldn't give them away. And kohlrabi. And ladies, if you like beets, but you hate the way it makes your dish look because it bleeds all over everything. If you put beets with anything else, it just bleeds there. So if you have that problem, but you like beets, use the one on the top there. Use that one. It's called a heirloom gourmet, yeah, a gourmet heirloom, I think. Anyway, they come in white, and they come in red and pink, kind of an orange color, and they do not bleed. It's a good beet taste, maybe a little different than the purple ones down here, but a good beet taste, and you don't have to worry about it. Okay. Okay, now this particular garden, we believe in the principle of tithing, and tithing is 1/10 of the increase. However, in this garden, we don't pay for the land, we don't pay for the water, we don't pay for the tiny bit of electricity we use, and it's just a donation to this garden class. It's at a church there. And so we set up a rule for ourselves that just said, we're going to take 20% of the produce, whatever we pick each week, we'll just sit out here on the picnic table, and we'll take 20% of that. The first year we took it to community services, and they would give it away to anybody who came in and needed food. Then in more recent years, we have changed that so that we have garden members. We ask garden members if they know anybody that needs this kind of food. This food is absolutely healing. Let's say that you have somebody in your garden club, your neighborhood, your church, who gets a serious disease. I'm talking about, let's say, stage 4 cancer or heart trouble, diabetes, any of these serious diseases, even MS, although MS is a tough one there. If they will eliminate the toxins that caused them to get sick to begin with, and if they will eat produce that's grown this way, I'm talking about fully mineralized, including some of the ocean water, what's happening is that in 3, 4, 5, 6 months, we're getting calls back from people saying, "Hey, my doctor cannot find any sign of this disease." I'm talking about stage 4 cancers there. People who were sent home to die said, "We can't do anything more for you." So you can actually save lives if you will use food like this and eliminate the toxins, but have people eat this way. So anyway, how we tithe now is that anybody in this garden class who knows somebody like that in the neighborhood, we want them to take a box or a bag of this produce to that family, that person, and just say, "Hey, I helped grow this. It's better than the best organic food that you can grow. And if you like, I'll bring you more, but here's some there. So that's how we tithe. Last week, this little lady, Sobeda, that grew that squash I talked about, she came to me and she said, she said, Lynn, I have a neighbor, a lady that I just met because of physical abuse. She and her husband are getting divorced. They've got little kids, and she just moved here, and she's desperate. She's very poor. And so, of course, we said, take a big box of produce to her, whatever she can do, and we'll take that to them regularly. So anyway, that's the way we tithe with this now, and it has been a good thing for us there. Okay, question?
Yeah, like I already planted some fruit trees like a couple years ago, but I didn't know about this method, so how could I potentially incorporate some of the Ellen method with my fruit trees that I currently planted?
Okay, that's a good question, and it is. These trees are already planted a few years ago. How do we get some of the benefits of this? Well, obviously, don't dig the tree up. That would be too much of a shock for the tree. Any trees from now on, if you plant them this way, will get great results. One thing we do is we have a tree planting kit, and we'll demonstrate that this afternoon. When we're treating trees that have been there for a while, we use some of that material, not as much, but we'll distribute some of that around the tree, the drip line, and we'll even sometimes dig some holes, put compost with it, compact it in, and that tree will do fine. Another thing you can do for existing trees is to put a mulch. My first preference for a mulch would be an alfalfa mulch, which is non-GMO. Make sure it's non-GMO, okay? We're getting genetically modified alfalfa now, so avoid anything that has genetically modified material in it. It causes all kinds of problems there. If you don't have alfalfa mulch, then use whatever's available. Leaves, straw, whatever, but get a good mulch around that tree. Put the minerals on the ground first, and then put the mulch on top. Keep that mulch away from the trunk of the tree by a good distance, a foot or two away from the tree there, and you'll do just fine with it there. Okay, if there are questions, we'll take it. Yes.
What rate of the ocean water do you use per 1,000 square feet that's diluted 10 to 1?
Okay, good question. What rate of ocean water do we use in the garden there? Let's go to the handout. And can you hand that?
Here you go.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, it looks like this. Okay, so look from your handout like this. It says directions for ocean salts or seawater.